Hi everybody! Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using the April Color Kitz collection from Shimmerz Paints. For this layout, I'm going to be using the cut file that comes with the kit. So I'm making a mixed media background to put behind the cut file. Most of the background is going to get covered up by the cut file, but I still wanted to have little traces of mixed media popping out from behind it. So I started off with my favorite background for mixed media. It's a piece of smooth white cardstock that I've coated with some Liquitex gesso. And now I'm using a beautiful bright blue color. I really love royal blue. And I am spreading it around the background. I kept placing the cut file on top of the background just to make sure that it looked the way I wanted it to and that I had the background paint in all the right places. So I didn't record any footage of backing the cut file. The cut file for this month was a really pretty flower. So I made a little grid of flowers, 3 by 3 on my silhouette cameo. And then so that I didn't have to glue the flowers onto the background individually, I use the offset feature, and the offset feature will make a shape that's a little bit bigger than the shapes that you have. So even though the flowers were individual, when I created an offset for it, it made a background piece that was attached. All the flowers were connected that I could attach all of those individual flowers to. Now, if this is not making any sense, or if you would just like to see the process, please let me know, because I would be more than happy to make a video where I use the same cut file in the same way, because I love this cut file. I think it would be great for a number of different layouts. So just let me know if that's something you're interested in. And then to back the cut file, I used 2 pattern papers. One's a yellow flower, one's a green star. And then I also used a piece of watercolor paper, and I colored it with one of the Shimmerz paints. But getting back to the background, you can see that I created kind of a really large square in the background, and I kept it probably about an inch or so away from the edge of the paper. I didn't want it to go all the way to the edge, but I didn't mind if there were some splatters all around the outside of it, just to give the background kind of a painterly look. And using this little piece of plastic, I applied this color several times. I didn't want the background to be too crazy and too busy, so I just used the one color, but I thought that this color would be perfect to put the cut file on top of, because it's not one of the colors in the cut file, and it's a nice contrast with the colors that I have in the flowers. So applying the color several times will build up the color, make it a little bit darker and richer. It all depends on what look you're going for in your background. And then here I'm adding a number of splatters and mainly concentrating them along the edge of this big blue square. As I had mentioned, I didn't want to go too crazy in the background, creating too much pattern or using too many different colors, but I thought that I could use some modeling paste with this very subtle stencil. This is a stencil that I use quite a bit on my layouts. It's a Crafter's Workshop stencil called Mini Cherry Blossoms. And I just find that it goes so well with so many of the backgrounds that I create, so I try to keep this one handy. I'm using it with some Crafter's Workshop modeling paste. And once again, most of this is going to get covered up. There'll just be little bits of the background visible, but I do really like the way these flowers look against that really bright blue background. I think that it's a really pretty effect. I wanted to make sure that in addition to having the modeling paste in the corners, that I got some in the middle so you could see these little flowers through those little openings in the cut file. When I was filming this video, I wasn't at home. I was at a scrapbooking retreat. 2 or 3 times a year, I go scrapbooking with some of my friends. We go to these retreats that are in Connecticut, and I have to tell you, we have a really fun time. They have lots of fun games and prizes. You can earn tickets, and they have sketch challenges. And when you complete a sketch challenge, you can earn tickets, and then you can put your tickets in to try to win a prize. And very often, somebody that I'm with will win a prize by the end. So it's fun. One of my favorite things is the table that they have where people can put out the things that they would like to sell. there are some people who sell some really amazing things on those tables. I really find some great bargains, and it's just fun. So I really enjoyed this weekend, and I was very productive. I got a lot of layouts done, and I just had a really great time. So I cut my background a little bit smaller, and I mounted it on top of a gutted piece of pattern paper from the collection. I just wanted there to be a little bit of orange going all the way around the edge. And now I'm ready to attach my cut file down to the background. So the background piece of paper says hippity hop. And even though I don't use a lot of embellishments that have to do with Easter, this is an Easter themed layout. I have a picture of my daughter who's participating in one of the last Easter egg hunts that we had. Julia, my daughter that's pictured here, and my nephew, they're the youngest of the cousins, and you can see that my daughter isn't all that young in this picture. So her sister and her cousins were several years older, and we finally decided that they were getting a little too old for an Easter egg hunt, but it was a hard tradition to let go of. And maybe there'll be another generation at some point, but who knows? But it was fun to catch those memories while they lasted. So I wanted to add a little bit of color around the photo. So I cut out a mat to go right behind the photo. That one is going to remain white. And then I cut a slightly larger mat. And for this mat, I'm using a Vibez in mustard seed to add some bright color around the photo. And here I'm just using that same paper that I used for my background. And I put one layer of color, and then I was thinking that I wanted that yellow to be a little bit more intense, so I decided to go back in and add some additional color. And I just kept going around and around the edge until I felt like the color was the right intensity. And luckily I remembered my heat tool. I don't want to use it too much because the heat tool tends to make paper warp. And what I do when I'm at home is I will put warped paper through my laminator, but I don't have my laminator with me, so I didn't want to make any of the papers too warped. So I use the heat gun very sparingly. So now I'm adding some adhesive to the back of the photo, and I'm putting it on the right side just because my daughter is leaning to the left. So I started off by having the photo on an angle, but somehow by the end of the layout, it wasn't on an angle anymore. It was straight up and down. The next thing that I wanted to do was add a few embellishments around the photo. I didn't want to go crazy because the cut file is pretty busy, but I did want to have a little something other than just the cut file. So I'm using some of the floral pieces from the die cuts, and I'm arranging them around the photo. I'm also using one of the dots. It says spring. It has lots of great colors in it, so I wanted to include that. I put that on the lower left-hand side of my photo. And then I selected 3 flowers from the ephemera pack to put on the centers of the flowers. I didn't want to put them on all of the flowers. I just wanted to have them on a couple. And one of them is a blue color. I don't have that color blue anywhere else on the layout. So what I decided to do later on was add some photo corners in that color. Right now I'm going to add a border to the title. The title is another piece from the ephemera pack. It says "Every Moment Matters." So I attach it down to that same orange paper that I painted to back the cut file with. You could see the 3 orange flowers are the same color. And that orange color is a Vibez called Tangerine. I'm going to put my title to the left of my photo. You're going to see, if you look carefully in the final photo, that I moved that title down. Later on when I looked at the layout, I felt that it didn't look great that the title was covering up the center of the green flower, so I decided to move it down so you could see some of that center of the green flower. It just looked a little off to me when I looked at it later on. And I'm always going back and changing my layouts, but it seems that lately I've been changing them like long after I thought the layout was done. And that's just a little stage I'm going through, I think. And then I wanted to add some centers to the flowers that I added the ephemera flowers to. So I'm using these big dots. I got these from Hobby Lobby a while back. And I wanted to mention that the centers of the green flowers are that same paper that I used to create the orange flowers. But to make those dots, I used a Tim Holtz stencil with some modeling paste, and that created the little dots in the center. Now that I'm thinking about it, I really should have included some footage of me with the cut file because it seems like there's lots of things to describe, and I probably could have shown you instead of telling you about it. Now, I had a tab at the top of the photo. It said April, and I decided that I wasn't going to include that just because I thought that it was a little bit too big for that particular photo. This photo is smaller than 4x6. I think if I had a 4x6 inch photo, it would have been the perfect scale. So I decided to use the back of it to punch some photo corners out of. This way I have my photo corners, but I could still use that tab on another layout. So whenever I have a layout where I have lots of large scale features or elements, I like to go back in and include some details, some smaller elements. So I thought that the ladybug page you could see to the left-hand side of my mat was perfect for this. So I fussy cut out a number of ladybugs. I didn't go absolutely crazy, but I did cut out a number of them in all different colors, and I scattered them around the layout, putting them on many of the flowers on the cut file. I didn't put them on all of the flowers, but you could see there are quite a few ladybugs scattered around the layout. And then as a final touch, I used some strips of jewels that you could see here. I'm cutting them into individual jewels to add a little bit of pizzazz to those photo corners. I love these little iridescent jewels. They don't add another color, but they do add some shine to the layout. And that was the final touch. The layout is complete, and here are a few close-ups. Please don't forget, when you place your order with Shimmerz Paints, use my name in the comments and you'll receive a free gift. And in the description box, I always include links to the Shimmerz shop. You can take a look at the color kits, all the beautiful paints that they offer, and all the other products that they have available there. I know this is one of my shorter videos, but I wanted to say thank you so much for spending a few moments with me. I hope that you enjoyed watching this. And as I mentioned, if you're interested in knowing more about the cut file, just let me know in the comments. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you all on my channel again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.